Thinking Liberty, Episode 13.
Welcome to Thinking Liberty, the podcast that explores lifestyles of freedom-minded individuals. Join us as we discuss work, hobbies, health, learning, and more while living a travel-orientated lifestyle. Be curious, be open, be inspired, be free. And now, here are your hosts, Zach and Sarah Varnell.
Hey everybody, welcome to Thinking Liberty, our 13th episode. We're joining you still from Niantic, Connecticut. And as always, I'm Zach.
And I'm Sarah, and this is actually our last night in Connecticut for us. When you guys are listening Monday, hopefully, we will be in Rhode Island. So we're getting pretty excited about that. It's always fun getting to a new stop.
Yeah, and we've used Connecticut as a jumping off point to actually visit Rhode Island once already. And we liked what we saw so far. It was really the first time in the state, and we went to a little town, forget the name. Do you remember? I think it was I don't know, East Beach, or I don't know. I don't remember, but...
We went there because they were dog-friendly.
Yeah, it was a dog-friendly beach, and it was a lot of fun. We walked around this, I don't know, we walked around a beach. I was about to say island, but I think I just had Rhode Island on my mind.
I think there was an island that we could see off in the distance, so maybe that's what's been sticking in your brain. But
yeah. But, I mean, it was a good walk. It was really nice out, and we brought our dog, and he just went crazy in the sand and in the water, and we ended up walking in the water, too, even though I hadn't really planned on it, and I think I ruined my shoes, but...
They were already ruined,
yeah,
let's be honest here.
Yeah, they were pretty bad.
But Connecticut's been really nice so far. We've been really lucky. We've had really great weather. It's been pretty cool. It's been high of 60s most days. I think it was 80 degrees here one day, but that was it. We haven't had much rain, so we've really been able to, get out and do things when we haven't been working. So it's been really great so far.
Yeah, and I think we were just talking about what our favorite things here in Connecticut were. And I think you said that yours was still the book barn that we talked about on the last episode, right?
Yeah, it was just really fun. I just really liked being able to wander through and look at all the books. And I wish we would have had a chance to go back because that one location was actually pet friendly, so we would have been able to bring our dog, and that would have been nice. But it was just fun. I mean, I love browsing through books, and I love finding new books to read. And so, yeah, that's definitely still, I think, my favorite part.
Yeah, then I really enjoyed our weekend trip where we went to Fisher's Island, New York. And I thought that was a lot of fun because we rode a ferry, which is nice to get out in the water a little bit and, feel the wind and kind of sit on the deck in the sun out there. And the ferry, again, was dog-friendly, so we brought our dog and walked them around the island. We went to a rocky beach there.
Well, more pebbly beach.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, there were everything from giant stones to little pebbles. I think I may have tweaked my ankle a little bit walking out there, but overall I think it was pretty fun. It wasn't exactly what we expected.
I think Ollie really didn't know what to think of it either. He just kind of was gingerly stepping along on these pebbles, and It was kind of funny, but... yeah, I mean, the island was really nice. It was very peaceful. I think that was one of the hotter days that we had here. I think it was actually supposed to rain, but it cleared up and became pretty sunny. But there was still a nice breeze, so it wasn't too hot. I definitely think, though, I don't know... My expectations versus reality are sometimes completely, out of sync. So I was thinking that this would be kind of like a tourist spot with little, shops for souvenirs and, craft stores and lots of little cafes. But it was really pretty simple. The island is really great. It's good for if you're having, a summer getaway. There's a lot of people that have houses there, and they stay there, a few days a week. So there was a couple of little restaurants. There was a fish market that was closed, and there was one little gift shop and a little ice cream shop, but
yeah, it was
definitely
wasn't
too much to see.
It was a sleepy town on an island, so I mean that's good and bad. We really liked the feel of the island. It would seem like a cool place to bring your family and get a rental there and spend some time over the summer. But at the same time, when we took the ferry, we didn't bring our car, and we were just walking around, and it wasn't the best for that, because things were, it's definitely walkable, but at the same time, things, were a little bit spaced out, and we would walk somewhere and find out that it was already closed for the day or that it opened a little bit later. And it seemed like the information online and on Google Maps weren't the best, because these places kind of just make it their own hours and do whatever they feel like doing, and then have different hours for the winter and summer, considering there'd be a whole lot less people there during the winter. But overall, it was fun. I think it was a definite change in expectations for us. Like, Sarah said, we expected maybe more shops to duck into and more restaurant choices and things like that, but it was more like just walking around a small town that happened to be on an island.
Yeah, but it was a lot of fun, and maybe not favorite thing about Connecticut, but definitely favorite thing about our time here for Zach. But it was fun to walk around, and everyone there was super friendly and chatty and talkative, and the weather was great, and we went to a couple different beaches and just kind of saw the sights, and so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you could tell people there were probably on vacation themselves, or at least in weekend mode. Even it was the weekend, so that makes sense. But because people would come up and just talk to us, or come up and ask to pet our dog, and spend a good amount of time talking to the dog and petting him, and then asking us all about his breed and things like that. So, it was fun overall. Is there anything else we're missing from our time here in Connecticut?
I don't really think so. We've gone to a couple of restaurants and just kind of explored a little bit. We drove to the city that Stars Hollow was supposed to be based on, and kind of just drove through it and experienced that a little bit. And
that's
that was
from
kind of
Gilmore
cool.
Girls, by the way. You say that like everybody's going to know.
Well, of course they should know if they don't know. But yeah, so that was kind of fun, and we drove into Hartford for a little bit, but we didn't actually do much there. So that'll definitely be on our to-do list the next time we come through.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was getting late. We were getting hungry, and it was getting a little dark and stormy in Hartford, so we didn't get to see it quite as much. But I'm sure we'll be back through here at some point, and if we RV through Connecticut again, I think we'll stay in a different part of the state and check out a part we haven't been to now.
Yeah, definitely. So we're definitely looking forward to moving to a new park in a new state and getting set up and settled this weekend, and hopefully getting some good exploring of Rhode Island in. I wanted to take a minute before we go into several minutes before we move into the interview part. Zach and I get a lot of questions about RVing and about living on the road, and some of them are, commonly asked questions where we'll get the same question, 10 or 12 times. So we wanted to start trying to answer some of these for you guys, and seeing, if anybody else has the same experience, maybe they can give us some advice or feedback too for other people that we can share. So one of these questions is, how do we pick RV parks, and how do we decide where we're going to go or where we're going to stay? And that's actually a really good question, and I'm sure a lot of people do it differently. But it's also kind of interesting because sometimes your planning kind of falls through. Like with us, this trip, we started planning our New England trip very last minute. We had it planned, we just hadn't booked anything.
Yeah, and we were so proud of ourselves before that, because when we saw winter creeping in, we went ahead and booked everything for our leg of the journey that was Florida and Alabama and Mississippi. And then we, were looking at the weather and deciding, it's like, all right, at this point we need to start moving further north. So we even booked, Missouri and Kentucky and things like that, where we'd be at just the right level and kind of be able to be comfortable at the right time. And we were doing great until we realized, hey, our plans run out in about 2 or 3 weeks. We should probably start, making this New England leg of the journey.
Yeah, we got a little too comfortable.
Yeah.
But so, sometimes, your plans fall through. Like for this stop here in Connecticut, we try to take a look at reviews online whenever we're planning. So I like to use Google Maps. I'll take a look at the ratings there, the reviews there. I'll take a look at the pictures that people are posting. It links me directly to the websites, so I can check those out, see if there are any reviews on the website, see what the pictures look like on the website. And sometimes even, I know this might be a little bit judgmental, but sometimes even the way the website's built out will kind of tell me whether we want to stay there or not. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that one's hard because almost no RV parks have nice websites.
Yeah, but there can be some giveaways. Like,
Yeah.
if there's a ton of misspelled words, I'm not really sure about your management skills.
Or if the picture they thought was the nicest and they put on the front page is of like, I don't know, some
has the dumpsters
rundown,
in it or something. Like,
or rundown RV with a broken down Camaro next to it. And we're like, we're not going to stay there.
yeah, maybe we'll skip you guys. And then Zach uses RV reviews. What's it called?
RVparkreviews.com. I feel like it's generally pretty good. People can be a little picky on there, and more so than I think we are, but overall I like it.
Yeah, and they can be more picky on there than they can be on Google Maps too. But the RV Park Reviews does give you a little bit more information, like right up front. So it'll tell you about, like, for instance, hookups. Like, do they have water hookups, electricity, sewer hookups? And then they'll tell you things about, like, internet, which we've learned not to trust at all.
Yeah.
And, they'll also give you, like, cleanliness reviews, which for us, we never use the bathrooms in a park, so we pretty much ignore that one too. But
that can still be a reflection on the park overall.
Yeah,
if people are
definitely.
reporting that there's, chupacabras in their bathroom, then probably the rest of the park is going to be in various states of disarray too.
yeah. So those are some of the resources that we use. And, like Zach said, we're not as picky as some people. Like, we've read reviews before where people have given them, like, a terrible, like, 1-star review because they didn't have a swimming pool.
Or it's like, there's a pothole 3 miles down the road that we hit. How dare them 1
Yeah.
star.
On a road that connects to the RV park, but that the RV park is, like, clearly not responsible for. It's clearly a city or state road.
There are definitely people, like you said, too, that will only give a 5-star review if they have, like, a pool, a hot tub, a playground, a dog park, I don't know, a drive-in theater, all these things that, like, we're never going to really use anyway because we're just using it to explore the state we're in.
And I can get that. I can understand that from a certain perspective. Like, if you're traveling with your family and you're taking a vacation in an RV and you're going to stay 2 weeks in this RV park and that's your vacation for the year, and you want to be able to be mobile and you want to be able to get out and explore things and you're planning to hike, you want a little bit of a camping feel, but you also want to be comfortable, well, then maybe you're looking for activities for your kids and you're looking for a really clean bathroom because you've got 6 people staying in your RV and, you're not always going to be able to have your little tiny RV bathroom be enough. So I can kind of get it to a certain extent, but for us, it's like...
Yeah, as long as we have a decently reliable source of hookups, water and electric and all that, and a safe place, and, we like for it to be clean and not a huge eyesore. I think what Sarah's about to get into is how the park we're in right now is kind of in a developing stage.
Yeah,
And
but...
There's parts of this park I consider a little bit of an eyesore. Like, it's half RV graveyard, which isn't the best. But at the same time, it's perfect for, I wouldn't say perfect, but it's alright for what we need, which is just a place to park our RV, work from during the day, and then in the evenings and on the weekends go out and see the sights.
Yeah, so that's kind of leads into, like, the things that we do look for. So we look for, like, proximity. How close is the RV park to the things we want to do? Like, if it's, a beach state, how close are we to the beach? How close are we to, any of the touristy sites? How close are we to any state parks or national parks that might be nearby? So we look at proximity, and then we also try to look at, we'll read reviews for, like, quality of this RV sites. So is it level? Do they use gravel? Is it just dirt? Because if it's dirt, then it can erode over time, and if it was level at one point, it might not be now.
And especially if it rains, then we're stepping out into giant mud puddles, and our RV starts to get disgusting, and the wheels work their way down into the mud.
Or like that one time you stepped out and you were in, like, a giant, like, rain puddle.
Yeah, I think when we were in Nashville or something, it flooded a little bit, and I don't even remember why I went outside, but I stepped outside and there was like a half a foot of water everywhere in the park. But that was a great park,
so
by
we
the
definitely
way.
got muddy that time. But but that was a really good park and we really enjoyed that one. But so we'll look for, is it dirt, is it gravel, is there pavement, are people complaining about the levelness, are they complaining about how close they are? Like, a lot of times some RV parks might really try to squeeze in the maximum number of spots possible, so you might be right up on your neighbor. And sometimes that's fine because we're not always in places when it's, like, on season. So, and we might be somewhere when like there might be only 10 other guests. So then it's probably not really a problem. Like that state park we stayed in, I don't know why, but during the week there was like nobody there.
Oh yeah.
We had
were
plenty
the
of
only
space,
ones.
but even if we hadn't had plenty of space, it still would have
It'd
been
been
fine
fine.
because there was nobody there.
Yeah, and some of that stuff I used to think was silly, but the more we go to different parks and kind of experience different things that are wrong with the parks, like maybe an unlevel site, I used to be like, who cares? We have jacks on our RV to try to level us out. But it does
Do we, Zach? Do we?
Yeah, our jacks aren't doing so well right now.
We need to get
But
them looked at.
even if they were, a lot of times if the site is really unlevel, your jacks can only do so much. And I found out that it really does bother me when we're not level. Like I know there are the technical reasons, like your refrigerator might, I don't know, not function as well, or it's harder on your fridge to be unlevel. But at the same time, it just bothers me sometimes when, I open a door and it swings out violently because we're a little unlevel, or more than a little. Or it might be a little hard to sleep at night if I realize my head is pointing down or something. But
Or, getting into an RV, it's already a kind of steep process. So if you're unlevel and you're tilted way one way, it can be a lot harder to get in and out of the thing.
yeah.
But, so going back to what Zach was touching on a little bit earlier about Connecticut, since we planned so late, we ended up having to kind of take a chance. The park we're staying in now had 2.2 reviews out of 5 on Google Maps.
2.2 stars.
Yeah.
A lot of
2.2
reviews,
stars.
I think.
Yeah, a ton of reviews, 2.2 stars.
I think on RV
And-
Park Reviews it had a 1 star, I think.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But I was doing some research, and it said that it had just gone under new management, and now it's a KOA, which it seems to be. They've got all the branding, and a lot of the reviews seem to be pretty aged. I mean, at least the worst ones were pretty aged. So we decided to give it a shot, since it was basically our only choice that was close to the beach. But speaking of that, we should have done more research on that too, because none of the beaches near us are dog friendly during the summer, so it didn't even matter anyway. But so do your research, folks. So we gave it a chance, and we get here, and I don't know, it's just kind of a weird park.
Yeah. I can tell it's improving, but it's improving very slowly. Like, when we saw that it was going to be a KOA, or it is a KOA, we were, willing to try it out. And like we said, it's okay. Like, we're here and it's good for what we need. But we kind of expected them to be out there working, really like turning it from this crappy trailer park in the woods into what you would expect from a KOA.
I mean, it's not exactly a trailer park. I mean, we're pretty lucky with where our spot is. We're back in the woods. Our spot is fairly level. We don't have anybody right up on us. There's a nice little fire pit outside. But I think the main thing
I think you're actually overselling it a little bit. I don't know. The thing that bugs me is just that it's like basically an RV graveyard. There are RVs here that don't have wheels on them. There's one that has a hole in the side of it. I just noticed the other day there's like a abandoned car parked in the woods. Today, luckily they were carting it off, but there was some truck that they were loading onto a trailer with a forklift in order to get it out of here. So it's just things like that really, if they just spent a long week or weekend carting all of that off, the place would instantly look a lot better.
I mean, part of it might be they're trying to extend it out and do only so much per week because of funding. But I think
they don't seem to be doing too much. Like on any given day, I don't really see anybody doing a whole lot of work. But
yeah, I'm the one that always gives everyone the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, well, maybe, but
yeah.
but
I'm
yeah,
the jerk
like
who's just
Zach
like, if I own this place,
I would tear everything down, burn it to the ground,
kick
start
everyone
over.
out.
Yeah, but I mean, the park could be really nice. It could be really great. So I'm hoping that they are, getting there, because this could be a really great place for people to stay. So I'll be interested to see, what happens in a few years, or not a few years. What am I talking about? Like next year. What is it like next year?
Hopefully, we don't know at the rate they're going.
But like Zach said, I mean, there's some RVs here that you can tell are clearly abandoned. Nobody's staying in them. And then there's some that you're like, are people staying in there? I hope they're not staying in there, but they might be.
I hope that's just one of the ones that the wildlife has taken over. I don't know.
which I don't know, maybe that's being a little judgmental on our part too, but I don't know. Anyway, we'll stop talking about it now. But definitely, you know, do your research, and sometimes the stars are important, sometimes they're not. So it's really just trying to figure out, like, what do you prioritize, what do you need in a park, and then really digging through the reviews to see what it's like. Look at the pictures, you know, check out Google Maps, check out rvparkreviews.com, and really just kind of make an educated decision. For the most part, if you take a look at everything that's being told to you by previous guests, you're going to have an easy time of it. Sometimes things will go wrong and you won't love the place, but for the most part, you can pretty much trust past reviews.
Yeah. And I really do think it's the way a RV park is managed that makes all the difference. Because, like, this place is a really nice area, cool small town. We're in a private part with trees all around us. By all means, it should be a top-notch, really nice park. And we've stayed in, you know, a sketch part of New Orleans that
I was just thinking about that.
a really nice place to stay because the guy there was so committed to making it awesome.
Yep, so. He was super friendly, super available, and he was really, like, concerned about the safety of his guests and the comfort of his guests, and checking in on you.
We're staying in New Orleans next to, you know, a place where trains are coupled, and just hearing those explosions all day, which isn't, you know, the real estate that is the most in demand, needless to say. And several times we heard gunshots, which, you know, I like guns and I shoot guns, but I don't do that in the middle of New Orleans or in the middle of any big city for that matter. So it's just a little bit sketchy and weird there, but still felt completely safe because we knew the guy there was running that place great. He, you know, kept an eye on who was supposed to be there, who wasn't supposed to be there. He kept the place clean. Like, at one point, it was near Mardi Gras, and some frat bros came in and just threw, like, a huge party, and were standing on top of their RV and everything. And when they left, everything got cleaned up after them, and they didn't do it themselves. And that's the difference where, you know, maybe this park isn't even the best at cleaning up some litter and some of the eyesores, but, you know, someone who runs a park better will be on top of that.
So for our interview today, we chatted with Janice, who is a retired school teacher, and she was telling us about her experience traveling via trains, and specifically she
in the
Amtrak.
U.S.
Yeah, in the U.S. via Amtrak. And it was a really interesting conversation. I think I learned a lot. Zach's always kind of wanted to travel a little bit by train, and I've always been kind of like, I don't know, it doesn't sound too exciting. But now I'm definitely on board. Yeah, we should definitely do it at least once.
I've always wanted to do it, but I've always also assumed that it wouldn't be very pleasant. But after talking to her, now I really want to do it, and I think it'll be decently comfortable, if not very comfortable. I know one of the things, and I shouldn't compare Russia and the United States like this, but one of the things that I saw was a Vice documentary of somebody riding the Trans-Siberian Railway, and it was like 100 degrees on the train, and people were like getting drunk and threatening to beat him up, and I'm like, yeah, dude, that's train travel. That's what I want to do, sort of. But no, I don't think it's like that at all from talking to Janice, so...
Yeah, and it's really cool. You know, we've been chatting with a lot of really interesting people about the different ways that they're traveling and living life and making, you know, exploring and adventuring a big part of their lives. And it's just been really cool to see that there's no really right or wrong way to travel or to, you know, enjoy your life. And I think one thing that we've been noticing is that there's some common, like, elements that goes along with people who travel, and they always have kind of similar pieces of advice and similar ideologies on life that I think are really helpful for traveling, but also really helpful in day-to-day life as well. And so it's just been really cool to see this. It's like, you know, if you want to travel more and you want to experience life more, there's a couple of things that you have to be able to do. Like, you have to be able to plan, but you also have to be flexible. You have to be able to be spontaneous and, you know, see where adventures take you, because sometimes you're going to meet somebody and they're going to be like, oh, well, this cool thing's happening, and you have to be able to pick up and go to really be able to experience, you know, what city you're in, what state you're in, what country you're in. If you get too hung up on your plan, then you might miss something. But at the same time, if you don't have a plan, you might miss something because you didn't research or learn enough about where you're going and what you're doing.
Or your plan might not work out at all anyway. Like, I've heard a lot of people who travel abroad might have everything planned out to the T, and then they find out that the thing that they wanted to do that day is closed. And in fact, maybe the whole city's closed that day just because they weren't familiar with that culture, and that's just how it is. And on Mondays, they close.
Are you talking about Jim Thorpe?
Oh, yeah, that wasn't, but that was...
Well, that wasn't international, but that was in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I was thinking of more just like, certain customs of maybe European cities or some South American cities where it's like maybe just Mondays are the day that things close at noon. You never know. Or there is a festival in town, so everything's closed, or you can't get anywhere because transit is closed due to this festival. But that might end up being the best time you had in your whole trip.
Yep. Yeah, we've definitely heard stories like that. And so, it's like you have to be able to go with the flow and experience, what's happening around you right then. And if things change, they change. But then at the same time, if things do start going wrong, your train gets delayed or canceled, or you miss your flight, or you lose your baggage, you have to be able to make decisions and be able to think on your feet and really be able to take control of the situation so that you can resolve things and make things better and still enjoy your remaining time. I mean, if you kind of have a little panic meltdown, well, then your whole trip's going to be ruined. So, and I feel like that's what a lot of people have been saying is that, you have to be flexible, but you also have to be able to plan and make decisions.
Be decisive.
Be decisive, but you also need to be able to go with the flow. So it's like you got to find a happy medium pretty much with everything, I guess.
Yeah. And I really thought it was interesting, just going back to Janice talking about train travel, which hopefully, will shut up soon and you can hear her. But she was talking about being able to see a part of the U.S. that most people will never see unless they do this. And that's another thing that just sold me on it even more, where she's saying you're going to see a different perspective when you're riding through places that you can't get unless you're on that train.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, some parts of the Midwest are so massively big. There's just so much space. So, of course, it makes sense, now that I've thought about it, that there are places that there are no roads, there are no trails. So it's just the middle of nowhere. And I guess if you're kind of independently backpacking or hiking, you could get there. But
maybe
not everybody has those skills to do that. And yeah, I mean, maybe the train
maybe
tracks don't go that way.
Yeah,
maybe it goes through some private property and it's sectioned off with fences, or I don't know. But she was talking about some of the different sites that she was getting to see of some rivers in the Grand Canyon, and it was just really cool.
Yeah, and I think the last thing that I thought that really resonated with me that she said is that she downsized quite a bit in order to take this train trip, which, by the way, she took this trip quite a while ago, and you'll notice that during our interview that she's talking about something that she did a while ago.
Yeah, when she was still a teacher.
But she is about to embark on another one where she's kind of indefinitely just going to ride the rails until she doesn't want to anymore or can't anymore.
Yeah, her plan is she wants to do every single one that's still existing in the U.S., and then she also wants to do the ones that go through Canada as well. So that's her current plan. And like Zach said, she had a house and she moved out, and she got a little basement apartment, and she's just kind of staying there when she's in town. And she got rid of most of her belongings, and she's traveling light and able to pick up and go at a moment's notice.
Yeah, that's one thing that's been super important for us, and it's still an ongoing process, is downsizing. It's like when we were in our house, we had way more than we needed to live in this RV. And even now in the RV, we have way more than we should have, and we're constantly trying to downsize, whether that's through, giving stuff to friends or donating to Goodwill or trying to sell things here and there, just however. And I know one way that we've had a little bit of success in downsizing is through Rent the Runway. It's a site that Sarah's talked about before, where you can actually get some pretty nice clothing.
I mean, it's designer clothing, so everything on there is really nice. It's high quality, and they let you, select your size and then select a backup size just in case. So it's great because, sometimes you get invited to a wedding or a banquet, and I am not going to carry, a lot of fancy clothes with me because, I might not wear it, but maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So there's really no point in having it in the RV. It just takes up space. I don't have that much closet space. I'm still working on downsizing my closet. So yeah, it's been really helpful and handy so far.
Yeah, and if you want to give that a try, not keeping so many clothes on hand and instead just renting the clothing for the event you need it for, especially designer clothes, things like that.
Last thing. They also, I know I was talking about like designer, like fancy wedding wear or banquet wear, but they also have more casual things. Like if you're planning a beach vacation or you're planning a Vegas trip or things like that, they have jeans, they have shorts, they have dresses, they have skirts. So it's really just, if you just want to get some new fun things for a special trip too, they're really good too.
Yeah, well, then I change everything I said, no matter what your reason is for needing to dress up or down. Go to Rent the Runway through our link at thinkingliberty.com/runway, and you'll get $30 off your first order that way. So check it out. That's a way that's been very nice for us when downsizing. I don't know if they have it for guys, so I still have, my go-to, suit and some dress clothes to wear to weddings, and that kind of drives me crazy. I don't really like having it on hand when I wear it maybe a couple times a year. So if they ever get this for guys, I'm definitely going to be on board too.
I think there is. We'll have to look into that because I think there is a different website that does that for guys.
Well, we'll check it out.
We'll have to check that out.
Anyway, that's enough from us today. Let's go into our interview with Janice and hear all about train travel here in the U.S.
Thank you, Janice, for being willing to sit with us and talk with us about your travels and your experiences traveling by train. That's one thing Zach and I have both always been pretty interested in, so I'm excited to learn more about it. But before we start asking you too many questions, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and your background?
I was an elementary teacher in Pittsburgh for 30 years. And when I left that job, I moved to Gettysburg, and I worked there as a tour guide and an innkeeper and sales clerk, and worked there for about 14 years. And when I was teaching, I took a travel sabbatical, and it was the best year of my life. And that was about 20 years ago. And so I just decided, I was meeting all these people at the inn that were telling me about all the wonderful places they were traveling to. And I said, it's time for me to take another sabbatical. So I got rid of all my worldly possessions, moved out of the house I was living in, and came here to Lancaster. And this is a great location from where to start your travels. And just decided I wanted to give myself another year to do traveling.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what first got you interested in train travel in particular?
When I was a Girl Scout in Pittsburgh, they took us on a train ride from downtown Pittsburgh to McKees Rocks. And if you're not, McKeesport rather, if you're not familiar with Pittsburgh, it's just a very short ride, but I thought it was the most fabulous thing in the world. And then as I got older, I thought, I want to travel by train. And when I took my sabbatical, I ended up taking 4 trips across country. 2 trips, so 4 round trips, 4 routes, because I took 2 round trips, and I took a different route every time. And then I also took a ride up the coast of California to Seattle. And every time I took a train trip, it just was a better experience every time I went. And it's just a very unique way of traveling. And I still think that that's the best way to go. And there's so many routes on Amtrak I haven't taken yet. That's what I want to do this year, as many as I can.
Yeah. Was it hard getting the sabbatical from teaching?
No, it was very easy. Now they have unfortunately eliminated travel sabbaticals in Pittsburgh, but at the time that I took mine, there was no problem at all. I had to submit a year in advance where I was going to go for the entire year. So I had to map out the entire year where I was going to go. And it wasn't all train travel, obviously. I flew some places and drove some places. But it was just a matter of doing the paperwork. I'm glad I did it when I did it, because shortly after that, they eliminated travel sabbaticals for teachers.
That's too bad.
So tell us a little bit like the mechanics of train travel. How long are you in each place, and are you sleeping on the train, or do you get hotels for the night?
That's a good question, Zach. The first time I went, I made the mistake of thinking I could it would be fine to travel coach all the way across the United States from Pittsburgh to California. And sleeping in coach is really not the best way to go. It's the cheapest way to go. And I guess if you're really young, you can curl up in one of those coach seats. But my knees were starting to bother me, and I managed, but I decided on the way back and the other trips I took that I would always get a sleeper car. Now, that's something you do have to plan ahead of time because the sleeper compartments do get filled pretty quickly. So especially if it's a busy time of travel, you have to really plan this months ahead of time. So I was always making sure I got things planned ahead of time. But the sleeper compartments are wonderful because you fall asleep. You have a seat, two seats facing each other, and then at night they come in and they fold them down. So you've got an upper berth and a lower berth. Well, I was by myself, so I just used the lower berth. But when you get a sleeper car, then that's considered first class. All of your meals are included. But it's wonderful falling asleep to the sound of the train, and that rocks you gently. Now, as far as staying at hotels, with Amtrak, what you can do is you can plan your trip either to go straight through, which I did the first time I went all the way, the second time, but the first time I got off at Albuquerque. And you can do that. You can plan to get off at whatever stop you want and then stay as long as you want and then just get back on. Now, that takes a lot of planning because you have to make sure that the dates you want to get back on the train are available and if the sleeper compartment is available and so forth. But it's pretty much up to you. You can get off whenever you want. So what I would do, for instance, when I went to Albuquerque, is I rented a car and then I drove up to Santa Fe and I spent about a week in New Mexico and just got to explore that area. And then I just came, and there's a rental car area right near the train station, and then get back on the train and head on to my next stop.
So it sounds as long as you plan everything out,
Yes.
it's still pretty flexible. You can still kind of see what you want to see, and
That's
like
right.
you said, you rented a
Right,
car and
sure,
went up,
you can.
and so you can kind of spread
Right.
out a little farther too.
Exactly.
What kind of tools did you use to help plan? Was it just through Amtrak?
Just through Amtrak. And this was 20 years ago, so I used a travel agent rather than planning it, as you would today, just using your laptop. But I had a really good travel agent in Pittsburgh. Actually, she worked for AAA. And, she saw me coming. She said, "Oh, here she comes again." But she was very, very helpful. And as far as hotels and things like that, I just did a lot of research. The hotels I didn't plan ahead of time. When I went to Seattle, I also rented a car, and I drove all around the state of Washington. And I stayed at a hotel in Seattle and then just took day trips from there. That you didn't have to travel or plan that much ahead of time. But the train, you have to really get your train reservations in, especially for a sleeper compartment.
How far in advance did you try
Well,
to book
let's
everything?
see. I probably at least, when I called, I was going in January, which was a good thing, my first trip. So it wasn't real busy. But if you were traveling around the holidays or in the summer, I never went in the summer because there were a lot of children on trains at that time, and so I liked to go when it wasn't quite as congested. But if it's a busy time, you probably have to do it maybe 3 or 4 months ahead of time.
Okay.
Because they do get filled up, especially if you want a sleeper compartment.
So when you had to submit your year-long plans, did you stick to those plans 100%, or did that kind of change up as you went along?
Pretty much so. Now I added on. We had the stipulation was that you had to travel 50% of the time that you would have been teaching. So I said, I'm going to do a lot more than 50%. This is my year to travel. So I probably traveled about 80% of the time that I would have been teaching. So what I did was I added on trips, but I didn't take any away. I mean, I had all of my major trips. I went to Ireland. I went to China. I had all these trips planned. And then talking about the train, I only had one train trip planned at the time. That was in January. And it was such a fabulous experience that I decided to do it again in April, because April wasn't a real busy month for me. I was just going to Gettysburg and Williamsburg, so I still had plenty of time. And luckily I was able to make the reservations. But there's all these different routes that go out west, and I wanted to take as many of those as possible. And I'm glad I did, because the one that I did take has been eliminated by Amtrak. It no longer is in effect.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of these trips a lot of these routes are disappearing. Amtrak is consolidating, and if it's not really lucrative, and it's sad because some of the people that live in these, like there's one that goes through Wyoming that was eliminated, and people depended on those. But if it's not financially lucrative, they're not going to keep it.
So the takeaway here is travel more by train so
Yes.
that these stops stay alive.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely. I'm a big fan of train travel, and I'll tell everybody, take it, because the more people travel, the more Amtrak is going to keep these routes, active.
I remember hearing a story of in Japan they were keeping some route in far northern Japan open because one girl needed it to go to high school or something. But
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my.
so you mentioned a little bit of overseas travel to China.
Yes.
And did you do any train travel overseas?
No, I didn't. When I went to China and Ireland, I went with tour groups. So that was all pretty much taken care of ahead of time, and we traveled mostly by bus.
Okay.
So I would love to do train travel in Europe, because I hear it's so much more efficient than our travel here. The one thing about Amtrak, you have to be careful if you're planning a trip. You have to be flexible. You can't have a deadline, or you have to allow yourself plenty of time, because all kinds of things can happen. The very first time I went on the train to Albuquerque, we had a terrible accident. There was a young man that was listening to headphones in a pickup truck, and he never paid any attention to there was no crossing bars, but the train was coming, something was flashing. He never saw it. He was
goodness.
listening. The train hit him and killed him. And because of that, here I am, my first train trip, and of course we didn't know at first what had happened. We were delayed for 5 hours because according to regulations, they had to fly in a new crew, and that crew had to be taken and tested.
Yeah, because the other crew needs therapy.
Absolutely, and also just to see if there was any drug and alcohol. And even though everybody knew, it was very obvious. I'm glad I didn't see it.
Yeah.
We just knew there was a sudden stop. But that was a 5-hour delay. Now, it didn't bother me because I was going to Albuquerque, so I got to Albuquerque at 10 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock. Had hotel reservations. The car was waiting for me. But there were people that had connections to make. They were going up to the Grand Canyon, and there's a connection you take to a bus that takes you up to whatever stop that is, and they missed their connection. So there can be things, and also with Amtrak in the United States, the freight trains have precedence, so that if you'll be taking a train and all of a sudden they'll stop and they say, well, we have to wait because there's a freight train, that takes priority.
Yeah, I think Amtrak doesn't own any of the lines.
That's right.
So.
That's the problem. So I always say I love train travel, but I don't recommend it if you only have a short amount of time for your vacation and you only have so many days to travel. You can lose time if you're willing to be flexible and say, well, when I get there, I get there. There's things to eat. It's very comfortable to travel by train, but yeah, that was a problem.
So is there any particular culture on the train? Are people somewhat social and there to talk?
Yes, that's a very interesting aspect of train travel. Why I think I like it so much, because when you eat in the dining cars, they're set up for 4 people. Well, I was traveling by myself, and other people were traveling in 2s or 3s or by themselves. And so you don't get to sit by yourself. So every time I went for a meal, and of course if you're traveling first class, all your meals are included. I met different people every single time I had a meal. And most of the time, now once in a while you'll get a person that doesn't want to talk, but mostly people are curious about what are you doing, where are you going? Yeah. And you meet some fascinating people. I met a young man from Cambodia whose family had been pretty much wiped out with what was going on over there. And, he was taking pictures with his camera of everything, but you learn a lot about other people. And I think that's one of And I met some people that I became very good friends with, and we corresponded for a long, long time because we spent so much time on the train together.
That's really neat.
Great.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the same like type of environment that you would find in hostels.
Exactly.
Like one of our good friends, he still keeps in touch with several people that he met in hostels while
That's
traveling.
right. That's right. Yeah, because you're relaxed. And they also have, the Western trains have these wonderful observation cars where they're all, you sit in the swivel chairs and you can see like 360 degrees because you can swivel your chair and it's all glass.
Wow.
And so you can see everything.
Really?
And people are just so excited and they're taking pictures and they're talking to each other.
I think I
And
would just stay in that car the whole time.
I did. That's exactly what I did. I had my sleeper car, which I could have spent the whole day in, but why was I going to stay there when I could stay in the observation
Yeah.
car? And then, of course, you can go down and get some coffee or tea, bring it up, have a snack. It's just the most relaxing. And then when you're ready, you go to sleep and
It's
you
making
wake
me
up in the
wanna
morning
go.
and you open your little
I know.
curtains and
Let's book our tickets.
you're in Oregon. There's cows out there. When you wake up in the morning, you never know what you're going to see when you wake up.
So what would you say was your favorite route and your favorite trip that you took?
Oh, my favorite route is called the California Zephyr, and it originates in Chicago, and it goes to is it Oakland, California, where it ends? I think that's where it ends, but it goes through Salt Lake City, Denver, the Colorado River Gorge, which is incredible because you're on this narrow ledge, and there's the Colorado River down there. And as I said, you can see things you can't ever see by car or by plane. And you're seeing, the Colorado River and the rock formations. And then we went up into the Sierra Mountains, and that was by far the most beautiful of all the routes I've taken.
So I guess one thing I've always been curious about, and I don't know if you know a lot of history about the railroads or anything, but I think part of the reason maybe why you see things that you wouldn't see in cities or near cities or
Right.
by car or by plane, I mean, when they were building these railroads, they tried to make the most direct route possible.
Yes, exactly.
So they just went straight across, they would cut through mountains.
Right.
And so it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere a lot of times.
Exactly.
So you get to see these rivers and
Yes.
sections of forests
Right.
that there's not a lot of tourism in yet.
Exactly.
Because it's just kind of
Yeah.
too far away
Wildlife.
from the cities.
Wildlife, yeah. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It just was the quickest and the best way to get there. And you won't see cars for miles and miles and miles. And sometimes, of course, you will. But in a lot of places, you're going through forests, you're going through mountains, and it's just the scenery is just incredible.
So does it feel like you're going back in time a little bit?
It does. It really does. And what's also interesting that Amtrak does is they have guides. Like whenever we're going into New Mexico, they had a local guide get on the train and talk to the people on the train, told the story of the Navajo code talkers. I don't know if you're familiar with them during World War II.
No.
These were Navajo Indians that they used the language of nature, and they developed a code. This was during World War II, so that they could communicate. And the Nazis were not able to break this code. And so it was so interesting to hear this local story about some of the people that lived in that area. And then I believe different parts of it's been 20 years, so I don't remember the details, but different parts of the trip and other routes, they would have these guides get on and talk about the history of the area, maybe who had settled in that area. So you were actually learning history as you were traveling.
That's really cool.
So it's amazing.
So as a solo traveler, did you have any scary experiences, or did you basically feel safe the whole time?
I absolutely did feel safe the whole time. I
Sure.
had friends that said, "Are you crazy? You're
Yeah.
going on this by yourself?" And when that incident happened with the young man being killed, that was a very tragic thing. And we were all in the people in my car. It was kind of a bonding experience because we were all upset and distraught, and we just started talking to each other. And then the train, the authorities on the train gave us free food and free drinks, whatever, just to and so we kind of bonded with each other over this because it was kind of a really traumatic. Not that we had seen it, but just the thought that
Yeah.
something like that had happened. But no, I never had any feelings of not being safe. I mean, you've always got people around you, and when you're in your little compartment, you can lock it. So I never had any feelings of, this not being safe. But I'm a very social person, and I make friends very easily. So, I met a lot of people and to me, that's what the joy of traveling is to begin with, is you learn about people and their culture and their backgrounds, and, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story. And sometimes people open up to you, like this young man from Cambodia started telling me about some of the things that happened to his family, and I felt so bad for him. But I think he was traveling by himself, and he could speak English, but wasn't real fluent. And I think it helped him to have someone to talk to.
Yeah. So did you get an idea of what type of people were riding the train and maybe why they were doing it? Was it people just interested in like adventure travel, or what was
all different reasons, Zach? I had a couple that I met that I kept in touch with for a long time, and he just loved trains. And they lived in Nebraska, and they would get on the train in Nebraska, and they would ride all the way to California and up to Seattle and then come back, and they would just do a whole circle, and they never got off. They didn't go anywhere. I was going to visit a friend in California when I took my first train ride, but they just rode the rails. They just rode the rails, and they didn't care really where they were going. They just wanted to be on that train, and that was their adventure. And of course, a lot of people were going, to visit, and a lot of people were afraid to fly, fear of flying. So there's a lot of reasons why people fly, or why people take the train. But I think a lot of them, and I took it because I just thought I wanted to experience it. But once I took that first trip, I was hooked. I just think it's the best way to travel.
Did you ever meet people that tried to maybe do like dress up like different periods or time periods to kind of?
Not on any of the trains that I was on. I know they do that in some of the more local trains, like they'll have in Gettysburg. They'll have Confederates get on the train, the little local train, and it's kind of for the tourists, and there's a train robbery. But no, that wasn't anything I ever experienced.
So what was like packing for these trips like? Did you have to think of how many clothes you needed or any other supplies?
Yeah.
I mean, how did you plan for that?
The one nice thing about train travel is you don't have to go through security, and you can take 2 large suitcases. I just always took 1 large suitcase, and when you're doing coach, that's a lot more difficult because you'd have to store your bag somewhere else, and you just had just a little overhead. But if you have a sleeping compartment, you can take your suitcase in there and use whatever you want. So. Because you could get off at different places, it wasn't like you were going to be on there, and I would usually do that. You only needed enough supplies to get you for a couple of days. So that really wasn't a problem or an issue.
Okay. I know we were talking earlier about journal keeping.
Yes.
So did you keep a journal?
Yes,
of all
I
your
did.
train
Yes, I
trips?
did. And I have it somewhere. Downstairs, Ruth. I believe it's downstairs. But I do have a journal. And I talked about the people that I met and the places that impressed me the most. And I'm a great believer in journals. And when you're on the train, you have time to journal because you're not driving, and you can just take your journal out whenever you want. And I would write about some of the people that I met. I just can't say enough about train travel. I think it's just a really exciting way to see the world, to see the country, and to meet a lot of interesting people.
That makes me want to go.
Yeah, same here. So after your trip, did you notice any way that maybe traveling by train and meeting all these interesting people had changed you?
I think so. I think it made me more adventurous and more wanting and desiring to do more travel, not just by train, but by other ways. And it just gave me that sense of, there's so much to see in the world, and I want to see as much of it as I can. And this is the way I like to do it the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was there any like challenges of traveling by train that you didn't know of before you started that
Taking a shower on a train's a little difficult. But that's very minor. That's very minor. And, the bathrooms are a little bit hard. The train's moving, and, that was a little bit difficult. But as far as challenges, other than, as I said, you have to be careful if you have a tight schedule because things can happen and you can't guarantee that you're going to get to where you're going to go at whatever time they say you're going to be there. But other than that, what incident, and there were other places we were delayed, but, to me, this was just a way to kind of step back from my hectic life and not have anything where I had to be at a certain place at a certain time. And I found it very relaxing. So not really many challenges that I can think of.
That's awesome. I think in most forms of travel, people always have, a couple things. They're like, yes, this is a big challenge and something I had to overcome.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to hear about a more relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you have to remember, Sarah, that I was on sabbatical, okay? I wasn't just taking a 2-week vacation. I had a whole year off from my job, so I was kind of relaxed the whole year. So, and I had allowed myself time in between trips to kind of regroup back at home. And so I was totally relaxed the whole time.
So would you say you went into it with that mindset of just, I'm going to be relaxed and have a good time and this is going to be a great year, and that helped?
I did. I just told myself that, and it came to be true that it was the best year of my life. It was a wonderful year, and I'm going to try it again.
Yeah. So what are your plans for this time? Do you have anything concrete, or are you just going to see what routes you want to take and do it?
Well, I had a little bit of a glitch, I think I told you earlier, because they have shut down the train from Philadelphia to New York. So I was going to start in August doing some trips maybe up to New England, and there's a route that's called the Adirondack. It goes right up the Hudson River Valley, and I've always wanted to take that. But because I can't get to New York, I'll just have to delay that.
You can go by bus.
I can go by bus to New York and then take the train, but I would think I'd rather just wait until I can get the train to take. There's
Probably more enjoyable than
exactly.
a bus. Yeah.
There's one cross-country trip, the only one I've never taken, and I believe it's called is it called the Southern? I can't remember the title of the train. I used to have this map on my wall with all the routes that I'd taken, and I
That's
marked them
amazing.
all. And it starts in Florida, and I'm not sure where, Orlando, somewhere in Florida, and it ends up in California, I believe San Diego or LA. And it goes through Louisiana, San Antonio, places like that, Texas. And that's the only cross-country trip that's still in existence that I haven't taken. So I would like to do that.
Are you going to use a travel guide again this time to help you plan, or are you going to do more of this online?
I probably will do a little bit of both, but I've always had good luck with AAA. They've always been very, very helpful. So sometimes, I might go there and then just to get their advice on, what. But I've done it enough times that I know how to do it, and I know what I want. I definitely want a sleeping compartment. So I don't know which route I'll take back, because I've taken all the other routes, so I can kind of choose which route. Probably that Southwest Chief is the one that goes through Albuquerque. I would love to go back to Albuquerque and New Mexico again.
Just relive some of your favorite stops.
Yes, that was probably my favorite, Albuquerque. And now I understand there is a train that goes from Albuquerque to Santa Fe that's just been recently since my last trip there, because it used to be you'd have to rent a car and drive all the way from Albuquerque up to Santa Fe. And I've never made it as far as Taos, so I'd like to do that. But there is now a train that you can get in Albuquerque, so I wouldn't even need to rent a car.
Yes, and you could probably see some different sights this time.
Right,
too.
exactly, yeah. So
It looks like that route might be the Sunset Limited.
that's it.
I guess from New
That's
Orleans
it.
to Los Angeles.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
That's cool. And it looks like at least part of it is the same route as the Texas Eagle, but it starts in New Orleans rather
Yes.
than up in Chicago. So
Yes, that's the only one that doesn't. The Western train doesn't start in Chicago. But yeah, and there's all these other ones. There's the Cardinal that goes to St. Louis. There's, I have all kinds of maps and brochures.
Wow.
oh yeah, just looking at their
Amtrak.
website, there's a ton of routes.
And my goal is someday to say I've done every Amtrak route that exists. That's my goal.
That's a fun goal.
But yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So do you find that using Amtrak is pretty stress-free? Because I know, like, sometimes I hate flying and I hate having to deal with airlines and TSA and all that.
And
Is
I think
Amtrak better?
And it it's not as efficient as flying as far as, the delays that can happen, but it's so much easier. You don't have to go through security yet. Now, there may come a point in time, if we have trouble with trains the way we have trouble with what's happening with flying. But as of this point, from what I understand, I was in New York several months ago by train. You just get on the train. No one's... Now, of course, they have all kinds of, police and guard dogs and everything, and the luggage. And I think you have to scan your luggage. But it's just, there's not that security and having to be patted down and, and standing in long lines.
Getting there 2 hours early.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I think that's why I like it so much. But plus, it's the fact that you can see so much. When you're on a plane, of course you're going to get there a lot faster. But to me, it's the journey is why you're doing this. It's not to get to a destination so much.
You can't just decide to get off your plane and check out some other place. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but their website, it looks like there's even a few that go into Canada. You can go to Quebec City and looks like Vancouver by Amtrak.
Yes,
so.
I'd like to do that. I've been to Seattle 3 times, and I would like to then take it and go up into Vancouver. And also that one, the Adirondack, goes all the way up to Montreal.
Wow.
So now I don't know I've never done that. I know they say you have to have your passport, of course. What kind of security there is on a train when it goes into a different country, because I've never done that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and I'm seeing that a lot of these even look like they have Wi-Fi on the train now.
Oh, yes,
so it's like you're
absolutely.
Gonna be connected and
that's another thing.
Yeah.
Of course, they didn't have that 20 years ago, but when I go to New York, when I went to New York from Pittsburgh, I would have, my tablet with me. You can, and you see a lot of people on the train with their laptops doing their work.
Yeah.
Working from the train,
I saw that too.
And you have your phone, you can talk, you can text. So, it's so real, and there's so much more leg room. And I have short legs.
Even
I don't know how
coach?
people. Yes, even in coach. I don't know how people with long legs take these long plane trips, because my legs get cramped.
Yeah.
They just have to pay for the extra leg room.
Yes, I guess
Which
you
isn't
do.
even that much more leg room. But
No.
Yeah, and that's an issue. But if you get lucky and you get a double seat to yourself, you can actually curl up and take a nap. I've done that on a train, back from New York. So, it's just so many advantages.
So if somebody was interested in starting to train travel, and they've never done it before, with your experience and knowledge, what would be like one big piece of advice that you would offer?
Plan way, way ahead of time. Get yourself to a travel agency or AAA, and they have booklets. You can see all of the routes. Of course, you can do that online, but I like to have the magazine in front of me, and then they'll have pages that show what the pictures are of the different things you'll see on the trip, and they even have vacation planning. And to plan ahead of time. There are books that are out on train travel. Some of the best train trips that you can take. Not just Amtrak. There are other trains that you can take that aren't Amtrak. Some of the ones that go up into the mountains and the steam engines and PBS has a lot of. That's the other thing. PBS has a lot of programs on train travel. And you can even buy the DVDs for that or download it or whatever.
I've been on airplanes where I've watched those and wished I was on trains.
Yes, I know.
I bet.
This looks so wonderful.
Yeah.
Why am I here?
They're talking about how great trains are.
I
and
know.
I'm cramped and can't even open my laptop because I don't have enough room. But
Well, I understand the trains in Canada are fabulous. That's something I'd like to do someday, is take the train. It goes through. You can go through Lake Louise and Banff and Jasper and go to Vancouver and through the Rocky Mountains. That's supposed to be absolutely incredible.
Well, I think that's it. Thank you so much for talking
you're
to us.
welcome. It was my pleasure.
All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Janice, learning about train travel in the U.S. It's something that I know was enlightening for me. A lot of misconceptions were cleared up, and it really got me excited for the possibility of Sarah and I doing this someday.
Yeah, like I said before, I mean, I never really had any interest in it, and I was just kind of like, all right, yeah, maybe we'll do that someday. But now I definitely see us planning this sometime in our future. If you guys go on a train trip, or if you've been on a train trip, reach out and let us know, what your experience was like. What were your favorite things? What route did you take? What stops did you do? Because I'm really interested in learning more about it. Also, if any of you have dressed up for your train trips, let me know that too, because I'm already planning the time period costumes that Zach and I will wear.
And I don't know if that's something people really do, but I guess Sarah's going to make it a thing.
They probably don't, but it just sounds fun, so we're going to do it.
Yeah. And also, if you have any friends, I know all of you have at least one friend who's obsessed with trains or transit. So send them this episode. We have a friend who we're always looking out for train-related stuff for him. And in fact, that's Kip from our Atlanta episode. So go look that up and just know that he's obsessed with trains. So if you have
more transit. But.
Yeah, transit specific. I don't know, maybe not specifically trains, but he loves trains, all right? Anyway, so if you have a friend like that, some weirdo who really likes trains, send them this episode. I'm not asking you to spam your news feed with this episode or anything like that, but just, find the one friend you think might appreciate it and send it their way.
That's all that we have for this week, so we hope that you'll continue listening, and we'll be back again next Monday.
See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Thinking Liberty. Subscribe to the show for free on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher at thinkingliberty.com. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, articles by Zach and Sarah, and more. We'll see you next time.